Story 1. I destroyed my life chasing a fantasy, and it cost me everything real. I almost lost everything by chasing a fantasy. Twice. I hurt the people closest to me, fell for illusions, and destroyed what really mattered, all because I couldn't see what was right in front of me. I've been married twice. My first marriage ended because I was too young and selfish to understand what commitment really meant. I cheated often, thinking I could have it all marriage and excitement on the side. I hurt someone who didn't deserve it, and by the time I realized the damage I'd done, it was too late. But even after the divorce, I hadn't changed. I jumped into a second marriage, convinced it would be different. Convinced I'd be different. But old habits die hard. I started pulling away from my wife, chasing excitement elsewhere, and falling back into old patterns. I traveled a lot for work, and I was reckless sleeping around on almost every business trip, thinking I could keep everything separate. Then came someone else. She seemed to have everything my wife didn't. Kid-free, never married, living the carefree, exciting life I thought I wanted. I convinced myself that leaving my wife for her would make me happy. So I did. I left my wife for her, believing I had finally found what I was missing. But once I made that leap, the reality of who she was hit me hard. Turns out, she lived a very dark life. She had been sued for fraud, had a DUI and a suspended driver's license, and had an affair with another married man before me. The professional connections she bragged about? Non-existent. In fact, she had no real friends and was known as a homewrecker because our affair became public on social media. The illusion I had fallen for. Completely fake. I had destroyed my marriage for someone who wasn't even close to the person I thought she was. The affair being made public through social media made everything worse. Suddenly, everyone knew. The fallout wasn't just in my personal life, it was everywhere. People saw me differently, and I had to deal with that shame on top of everything else. Despite it all, my wife and I never officially divorced. We had kids together, and every time I visited, we'd reconnect, sometimes even physically. It was messy and painful, but deep down, I don't think either of us ever truly let go. Eventually, I came clean. I told her the truth, that I wanted to make things right and do it properly this time. I didn't deserve her forgiveness, but she gave me another chance in her terms. We started counseling together. And let me tell you, counseling isn't a quick fix. It's brutal. You can't hide behind lies in that room. You have to face everything, the raw truth about who you've become. The hardest part wasn't admitting what I had done, it was hearing the truth from her. Hearing how deeply I had hurt her and facing the reality of the damage I'd caused. That's the part that sticks with me. The wounds don't heal overnight, and the process is slow, so slow that even now, I know I'm still working to earn back the trust once shattered. We started going on date nights again, being more present for each other, trying to build new memories. What I learned is that fixing a relationship isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up every day, in the small moments, even when it feels fragile, even when it's hard. I've stopped chasing fantasies. The relief of no longer living a double life is something I didn't expect, but the scars I left behind won't ever fully heal. I've learned that chasing illusions costs you everything real, and am living with those choices. I'm not looking for advice or sympathy. I just needed to get this off my chest. Maybe some of you have been in the same place chasing something temporary at the expense of what's real. I learned too late what it truly costs. Thank you for letting me share this. It's been a long time coming. Alarmed underscore links underscore 7148 says, doubt if anyone was going to give you any sympathy. But I hope you've truly changed for your wife's sake. Hikes underscore with underscore dog says, the fact you call your own mistress a homewrecker. Yeesh. And the mother of your children bullied for having kids, gross. Don underscore man says, you're the type of man that gives us men a bad name. You are incredibly lucky to have that kind of woman in your life. I hope you finally realize that and will change for the better. Be the type of man you want your son to be or your daughters to be with. Story 2. I'm happy my ex-best friend killed herself. We were friends for a couple years, and it honestly wasn't great. We bonded over our shared struggles, but I realized too late that she isn't self-aware enough of her own issues to stop herself from hurting others. She was a pushover, and she didn't think anyone else in the world had it as hard as her. I was never once defended if one of her friends said something off to me, even though I had no tolerance for people doing that to her. She'd do insanely stupid things and then immediately blame other people for the action she willingly took. Everyone around her, we all had more life experience, would try to help her, and she'd seriously act like they wanted her dead. She'd constantly call me and tell me she was about to kill herself and get furious when I'd call for help. The last time it happened, I was done. There was just so much that night that I don't even want to talk about because she truly screwed me over. I had to use someone else's phone to call 911 so I could stay on the line with her. Turns out the whole suicide thing that night was bullshit. She wasn't planning on doing it. She was just angry because she felt like I abandoned her. She tried to convince the state police that I was a diagnosed psychopath and pathological liar who was trying to sabotage her. I lost all respect for her that night. Now that she's dead, I feel different. It's easier to get up in the morning, easier to go to bed on time. Showering regularly doesn't feel like as much of a chore, and I'm getting better at cleaning up after myself. This isn't about revenge. I'm not sure why this was my reaction to her death, but I'll take it. Better than grief. Edit, I appreciate all the comments, even the few that are sort of against me. I just wanted to clarify some things. Happiness was maybe not the right word, sorry. And not from an English-speaking country. I guess the better term would be relief or freedom. Yes, she was borderline. No, I'm not the only one who felt this way. She lost many friends along with me. I know at least 4 others who are in a similar situation. I know the direct reason she took her own life. While it was obviously built on her issues, the actual reason she decided to do it was different. We both started going to therapy when we were in middle school, years before we met. I went with her to a session once, and she quite literally sat there ignoring the therapist. I ended up talking more than her because I was uncomfortable. Someone referred to my happiness at her death as rejoicing. I want to clarify that I did not celebrate or jump for joy when she died. She didn't die the day before I made the post. It's been a little while. The happiness kicked in several days after I found out. A couple mentions were of my lack of empathy mentioned in another post, and that's true. You'll never shy away from that. Always tell people that I don't experience it. That doesn't mean I am cold or unemotional, or that I want to murder people and watch the world burn. I just struggle with understanding the emotions of other people. Please don't misunderstand. Lack of empathy is lack of compassion. I wanted to help her, and I cared. I just can't put myself in others' shoes to understand how they feel. That is all. Calico Hippo says, I think you're just glad she can't hurt you or anyone else anymore. You likely feel the same if she had left your life in another way. She didn't need to die for your life to be better, she just needed to leave it. Everyone feels better when emotionally manipulative people are no longer in their lives. Also want to say there are lots of people who only feel relief when someone they know dies for many reasons. It's not an unusual feeling to have. Alepolate says, the grief will hit at some point. But right now you are feeling the relief. I went through something similar when my dad passed away. In my case, I was of course sad, and at that point I could still feel the love for him, but he was so far gone dementia, and he had been a pretty narcissistic man that a big part of me was just glad it was over for both of our sakes. The real grief hit me almost 2 years later. I had repressed so much, and I had worked so hard to not create an exaggerated idealistic version of him as many grieving do that I went to the other extreme. It took time, and I guess I'll keep doing it forever, but you'll eventually integrate the good with the bad and we'll have a full picture. They'll strongly suggest therapy. I thought I was over my grief period when severe panics started happening every time I went out drank. Kate6570 says, I went through this when my abusive boyfriend took his life. I thought I was a monster. The grief will come eventually, but the feeling of relief should tell you how dysfunctional that friendship was. It's okay to feel how you're feeling. Thanks for watching. I love you. Follow Reddit Echoes for more.